Test, test, test. 1, 2, 3. So everybody, I'm just double checking that everything is going to work here. We'll get started at 5. Thanks for already joining. Hello, everyone out there in our community. Mr. Chantry here from the Mallon Planetarium here at Methacton School District. Now, just to clear up, I'm not in the planetarium because obviously the planetarium is shut down right now. We can't have people in here. And hello, everyone out there. I have my speakers turned up. Sorry, I'm going to turn those down. Okay, so what we're going to be doing tonight, my name is Adam Chantry. I run the Methacton's Mallon Planetarium that's located at Arcolas Middle School. And normally during typical school years, I see everybody from grades kindergarten up through 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade visiting in the planetarium, and I do all types of lessons with people all throughout. Obviously this year, having a bunch of people crammed into a 60-seat planetarium is not in the cards in the near future. And I wanted to do a live stream of this really neat event, and it's in conjunction with the winter solstice. So today, December 21st, is the winter solstice. And the winter solstice is the basis, actually, for a lot of the celebrations that we have this time of year. And it just so happens that this year, on the winter solstice, everybody's excited about this event, and I was very excited about this too, of the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in the sky. I had planned to do a live view from my telescope. You can see my telescope. That's just a picture of it, just to prove I had it set up today, just in case we got a break in the clouds. We did not. I had it set up just until about 30 minutes ago, and I saw the weather report that there was one little hole in the clouds, but then there was possible rain behind it. I didn't want to leave that outside in the rain, so I had to run out and pull it back in. So unfortunately, I'm not going to have a live view from my telescope, but I do have all of the planetarium software on my computer, and I'm able to run the normal shows that we do and simulate the conjunction in the sky of what's going on. So what we're going to be doing, I'm going to play the typical show that we share this time of year. It's called Seasons of Light, and it's going to talk about some of the traditions that we have this time during the year, all kinds of different celebrations and customs of trees and candles and lights, and where those things came from. About 20 minutes into the presentation, it's actually going to start to talk about planetary conjunctions. At that point, I'm going to stop, and that's when I'll actually do the simulations on the screen, show you what the conjunction would look like. I'll also post at 6 o'clock, it'll be after this stream is done, but I'll post a link for the Vanderbilt Observatory is supposed to have a live stream of this too, or if you go onto YouTube or Facebook and you just type in live stream of conjunction, you could probably find somewhere in the country somebody's going to have a live stream. They won't have clouds over their head. Unfortunately, we have clouds over our head. It's supposed to be clear tomorrow night. The planets are still going to look really neat and really close together there. So what you're going to see here on the screen. So right now I have my webcam on and I'm down here in this little corner. Right above that, you see this is a different type of planetarium software called Stellarium that we use to simulate the sky kind of on a flat screen. I use this if you watch our monthly videos. If you don't watch our monthly videos, the planetarium, we do put out a monthly video. I try to have it out the first few days of every month that talks about what you can see in the skies. This is the software that I use for this. So this is a live view of the sky. And then over on this large part of the screen, you're actually going to see a simulation of the planetarium. Now, because it's the planetarium software, the planetarium company was very nice enough, Spitz, which is actually right down the road from where I live now. They're nice enough to give us the software on our home computer, but it is still displaying for the planetarium. So you're actually going to see a mostly round image there. You can imagine that it's up on the dome in the planetarium. Not quite the same thing as being in the planetarium. I really miss it. I really miss seeing all of our students in the planetarium. But for now, this is going to be a good enough substitute, and we'll still get the information from the show and things like that. Now, I will pull up really quickly. I'm going to take this image of stellarium here and make it big to show you if you happen to have a break in the clouds where you are right now. This is what we can see. We're looking south right now. So this is looking south. The moon would be up here in the sky. It's the first quarter moon, so it looks kind of like a capital D or a half moon there. This is right now how it looks at about 5:10 afterwards. I'm going to fast forward the time a little bit here. I can manipulate it a little bit here on my screen. If you give me just a second. Okay. So this is what it looks like right about now. I'm going to pull it to right about now as the sun is setting. And if you had the ability to see through the clouds, you would see the moon, and down to the right, following right towards where the sun is setting, is where Jupiter and Saturn are in conjunction. So conjunction actually means to join together. It's from Latin. If you remember from English class or Schoolhouse Rock, conjunction, junction. Things like and, but, and or are conjunctions that we use in writing. They bring together clauses, phrases, or sentences. So to bring together conjunction in the sky can be of planets, of stars, of moons. So a planet can go really close to a bright star. A planet might go close to the moon. The moon might go close to a bright star. All of those things are conjunctions. This conjunction is special because it's two of the brighter planets that we can see in the sky, Jupiter and Saturn, and because of how close that they are to each other. So I'm going to try to zoom in here a little bit. We're going to select Jupiter here, and we're going to zoom in just a little bit, if I can get in here. This might be what my telescope view would look like right about now. I'm actually going to take us a little bit later in the evening, just so it's a little bit darker there on the screen. So this would be what Jupiter and Saturn would look like right now. They're about 1/10 of a degree across. So the full moon is 5/10 of a degree across. So if you went from, about 5 times bigger than this, that's how big the full moon would be. So you can see how close together they really are. Jupiter would be the brighter of the two. If you had a look at it through a telescope, you might see the stripes, or what we call the equatorial bands on it. The 4 bright lights that you would see around Jupiter are the Galilean moons. These are the 4 brightest moons of Jupiter that you can watch move about Jupiter throughout the course of a night. And then, of course, over here, if I center in, this is Saturn. This would be a really, really good telescope view of what we could see. I was able to glimpse these two the other night. I was able to see the rings of Saturn and the equatorial bands on Jupiter. So you can see they're very close together in the sky. Normally they're a little bit further apart. Now if I jumped to tomorrow night it's supposed to be nice and clear. They're still going to be really, 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 really close to each other. They're not going to be very much further apart than they are right now. So even though we're a little bit disappointed that we can't see through the clouds tonight, tomorrow night is still going to be a good opportunity. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have my telescope set up. If I am, I'll throw another live stream up and try to get a good view through there. Or you can check out one of the other planetariums or observatories that's going to be doing the stream tonight. So that's just a quick look at what we can see there, and I'm going to take this back to our current time so we can see that. And there we go. I'm going to let that continue to play while our show is going on. So in case you get a hole in the clouds, you might get a chance to step out and see this. And with that, I'm going to bring up our presentation of Seasons of Light, which is our typical planetarium show. And you'll see once it starts, it's going to show up as a circular image here on the right of the screen. You can just sit back and imagine that you're actually in the planetarium. If you want to turn down the lights a little bit, you can see what's going on in the sky. And after this is played through for about 20 minutes and we've enjoyed some of the show, I'm going to stop and I'll come back and I'll talk a little bit more about this conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, how it happens, why it happens, and why it's kind of significant. So give me just a minute here. I'm going to bring up my softwares. Okay. I'm going to prep the screen. Alright, so sit back and I'm going to sign off and turn off my camera and microphone here and enjoy the good old presentation of Seasons of Light.
In the North Country, this is the time of darkness and quiet and cold. The grizzly sleeps, the coyote scavenges, and the mountains are sealed in snow. The sun rises late and goes to bed early. The nights are longest now, and the stars burn in the North Country and bright. This is the time of darkness and quiet and cold. This is the time when Orion the hunter mounts the heavens in his shining belt. Nipping at his heels are his hunting dogs, the greater dog bearing the bright star Sirius at its throat. High above, the seven sisters huddle for warmth, near the great bull Taurus with his V-shaped head and his mighty horns. The twins are there too, and Auriga in his starry chariot, all marching together across the fields and pastures of the sky. This is the time when the pulse of life slows, when the land sleeps under its winter blanket, a time for upturned collars and hot cocoa, and the cheer of a wood fire against the gloom. It is the coldest and darkest of the seasons, and yet this season holds some of the warmest and brightest celebrations of the year. And it always has. In the past, it was the winter solstice that people celebrated, when the southerly sun turned north again, when hope was reborn and the promise of life renewed. Today, we keep this season through the observances of Christmas, the Jewish Festival of Lights, and the raucous beginning of the New Year. Actually, the dating of our holidays and many of our modern traditions have their roots in the winter festivals of long ago. For in every age, it has always been our custom to turn this time of darkness into a season of light. This is the season when our thoughts turn to home and hearth, to friends and family, to the dreams of youth, and the remembrances of holidays past. This is the season of Christmas and Hanukkah, the season of candy canes and gingerbread and mince pies, of cards and carolers, of decorated homes and blazing menorahs, of Santa and Scrooge and the Nutcracker, of New Year's and noisemakers, of a baby born in a stable, and a star. And always, it is a season of lights. We light candles, we light trees, we light houses. Everywhere there is light. How is it that at this darkest of seasons, we should all be making so merry? We come by it honestly, for the winter solstice has always been a time of revelry. In its annual cycle, the sun is at its lowest in the sky, ready to creep northward again with the promise of spring. To our sun-dependent ancestors, It was the pivotal time of the year, and something worth celebrating. To understand the significance of this period, and why we have seasons at all, you have to understand the behavior of our Earth as a planet. The Earth spins in space like a top, rotating once in the period we call a day. But the Earth doesn't quite spin upright in its orbit around the Sun. It's tipped over a little, 23.5 degrees from vertical. As the Earth circles the Sun once a year, each hemisphere is alternately tilted toward the Sun and then is tilted away. When our northern hemisphere is tilted sunward, the Sun appears highest in the sky. It shines down on us most directly and warms us most efficiently, and we have the season we call summer. Half a year later, when our hemisphere is tilted away from the Sun appears lowest in the sky. It shines on us at a lower angle and warms us least efficiently. So the hemisphere cools and we have winter. Spring and autumn occur in between. On the Earth, we can witness all this tilting in the changing altitude of the Sun. The Sun makes its highest arc across the sky when we're tilted toward the Sun, around June 21st, the first day of summer. As our hemisphere slowly tips away, the Sun loses altitude in the sky. It rises and sets progressively farther south through autumn, and its midday arc is lower. By December 21st, our hemisphere is tilted away from the Sun, and the Sun appears lowest in our sky. For several days, it seems to hesitate at this low altitude, which is why we call this the winter solstice. Solstice meaning sun still. Then it starts northward again as our hemisphere tips back toward spring and summer. But long ago, the peoples of Northern Europe knew nothing about the Earth's tilt. They knew only that after the bounty of summer, the Sun lost altitude, and with it, the life-giving power on which they depended. It was a dangerous time. The air chilled, plants died, and fields withered. If the Sun kept descending, they were afraid they might lose it altogether, and the world itself would die. And so in early November, Celtic tribes lit great bonfires on hilltops as a sort of fiery encouragement to strengthen the Sun in its battle with the powers of darkness and death. And when at last the Sun turned back in late December, there was great rejoicing, for spring would come again, and the return of light and warmth and life was assured. The Celts were not alone in their concern. In the American Southwest, the Hopi Indians also held ceremonies to coax back the Sun. Each year, through careful observations, they determined in advance the date of the winter solstice to within a few days. This initiated a 16-day period of purification and ritual conducted in their underground ceremonial chambers called kivas. On the 15th night, at the time when Orion's belt was highest in the sky and the solstice was imminent, they performed a sacred dance in their kivas to help the sun turn back from its southerly course. With the new dawn and the sun on its northward track once more, the orderly cycle of life was restored. To these and other early peoples, this was serious business. The winter solstice meant renewal and continuation, and they felt their participation helped to keep the cosmic order. However, the solstice also signified the triumph of light over darkness, of life over death. That made it a time to celebrate, and perhaps the most spirited of the early solstice observances were those of ancient Rome. The Romans celebrated the revival of the sun with the festival of Saturnalia, named for Saturn, their god of agriculture. For a week around the solstice, the normal affairs of life ceased. Nobody worked, masters served their slaves, and people dressed up in costume and reveled in the streets. Then a few weeks later, in early January, the Romans began a second round of merriment when they observed Calends, the Roman New Year. There was much feasting, and people exchanged small gifts of greenery, cakes, and coins to bring good luck in the year to come. We don't celebrate the winter solstice as much anymore. The sun always manages to return, whether we encourage it or not, but much of the festive character of the season remains, and so does the theme of rekindled light. We see this in the Jewish feast of Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, which usually falls in December. This observance dates from the 2nd century BC, when Judah the Maccabee defeated the Syrian king Antiochus, who had desecrated the temple at Jerusalem. Following Judah's victory, the temple was cleansed and rededicated. The sacred lamp in the sanctuary was rekindled, and an 8-day festival of commemoration was established, which is celebrated as Hanukkah today. Incorporated into the holiday as its central ceremony is the lighting of the Hanukkah menorah, the Jewish candelabrum of 9 branches. The 9 candles of the menorah represent the relighting of the temple lamp by the Maccabee. According to Jewish tradition, when Judah reignited the lamp of the sanctuary, there was only enough consecrated oil to keep the flame going for 1 day. Miraculously, the flame burned for 8 days until new oil was prepared. In keeping with this tradition, 1 candle is lighted on the first night of Hanukkah, 2 on the second, and so on, using the central candle to light the others. By the 8th evening, the Hanukkah menorah is ablaze with fire. It shines as a reaffirmation of religious freedom and as a symbol of the light of faith. The theme of light out of the darkness also illuminates the Christmas story, which begins in the simple words of the Gospel of Luke. And so it was that the days were accomplished, that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. The birth of Christ forms the foundation for the observance of Christmas, and it's probably no coincidence it falls near the time of the winter solstice. Actually, nobody knows for certain in what season Jesus was born. The writers of the Gospels failed to give a date. The only clue comes from Luke, who noted, "There were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night." Some suggest shepherds were only on night watch in the spring, when the lambs were being born. But authorities do not agree on this. In fact, neither did the early Christians, who commemorated the birth at widely varying times throughout the year. It wasn't until the 4th century that church officials in Rome settled on an official date for the celebration. It's thought they chose December 25th because it was already popular in Rome as the birthday of the unconquered sun, a solstice festival which followed Saturnalia. It would have made good sense. The winter solstice was already celebrated as a time of rebirth, of new light for the dark world. By adopting this date and then solemnizing its pagan form, the church could exchange the light of the sun for their light of the world. Eventually, December 25th was accepted as the date of Christmas throughout the Christian world. Yet there are still a few groups that celebrate the Nativity instead on January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany, when the wise men visited. In some circles, this provided an excuse to celebrate all the days in between as well. And the time from Christmas to Epiphany Eve was known as the 12 days of Christmas. Today, people seldom manage quite that much merrymaking, although its memory is preserved in the famous song with all those swans a-swimming and lords a-leaping. Though the focus of our winter celebrations has changed, many of the old solstice customs still survive in our modern observances of the holiday season. For example, we still celebrate New Year's at the same time the Romans did, and in much the same way, right down to the noisemakers and the funny hats. We've also expanded somewhat on their custom of giving gifts. Perhaps the loveliest of the old traditions still involve the theme of light. In Northern Europe, the Norsemen used to salute the sun with a feast called Yule, during which they burned logs of oak. This custom survives in the Yule log. Cut down and brought indoors on Christmas Eve, the Yule log was lighted with great ceremony and allowed to burn throughout the holidays. Afterward, what remained was rolled under the bed, supposedly to protect the house from fire and storm, and save to light next year's log. We rarely go to this sort of trouble today, and find a more manageable symbol of light in the Christmas candle. It too is a source of many holiday traditions. The Irish have a custom of placing a lighted candle in the window on Christmas Eve to welcome Mary and Joseph, or anyone else who happens by in their place. In the American Southwest, people practice the Mexican custom of burning luminarias, candles stuck in sand and paper bags, to light the path of Mary and Joseph. And their Christmas Eve observances end with Roman candles, as they set off fireworks in yet another display of light. Another holiday custom that derives from ancient times is the practice of decking the halls. Evergreens were considered symbols of eternal life and proof the sun would return because they didn't lose their foliage in winter. That made them lucky, and Egyptians, Romans, and Northern Europeans all decorated their homes with greenery at the time of the solstice. Especially popular in Europe was holly, with its bright red berries, said to be able to ward off evil spirits and bad weather. Wreaths of the glossy plant were probably once meant to be symbols of the sun. Also popular was the mysterious mistletoe, a parasitic plant that lives on trees. It was sacred to the Celtic priests known as Druids, who cut it from the branches of oaks at solstice time and gave it to their people. It was thought to promote healing and fertility, and to protect against evil curses. In Scandinavia, it was a plant of peace, and enemies who met beneath it threw down their weapons and embraced. From this may have come the custom of kissing under the mistletoe. Undoubtedly, the most famous bit of holiday greenery is the Christmas tree. It too has ancient models. Both the Celts and Romans fastened lighted candles and trinkets to trees during their winter celebrations. The modern version probably had its origins in Germany, where evergreens decorated with fruit were used in religious plays of the Middle Ages. Eventually, fancier trinkets and candles were added, and the Yuletide custom began to spread from Germany through Europe. The custom was imported to America by German immigrants, including the Hessian soldiers who fought for England during the Revolutionary War. From these beginnings, through the era of glass ornaments and electric lights, the Christmas tree has become one of the most popular fixtures of the holiday season. Of course, the season has many fixtures. Some suggest even old Kris Kringle may have begun his career in the solstice festivals, eventually becoming England's Father Christmas. In the Middle Ages, he became identified with St. Nicholas, a kindly bishop of Asia Minor, known for his generosity, especially to children. Stories say he had a habit of tossing bags of coins down chimneys of the needy, and that once his gift fell into a stocking hanging by the fire to dry. The Dutch brought St. Nick to America, calling him Sinterklaas. Once here, like many immigrants, he had his name changed to Santa Claus. It was here he put on weight and picked up the red suit. It was also here he acquired the sleigh, the reindeer, Mrs. Claus, and the workshop full of elves at the North Pole. He still has a fondness for chimneys and filling stockings, and still symbolizes the holiday spirit of giving. Sacred and secular, ancient and modern, these are the threads we weave today into our winter celebrations. And in these and other holiday traditions, we find our link with past generations who also sought to make a dark season bright. Of all the symbols of light that continue to illuminate the season, one of the most meaningful for the Christian world is found in the Gospel of Matthew. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, Go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star, which they saw in the east, went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. The Star of Bethlehem is another bright beacon of holidays, and has long been celebrated in the art, music, and literature of Christmas. Over the years, it has also prompted an interesting question. If the star could have been a naturally occurring event in the sky, what might it have been? After 2,000 years and little to go on, it's not an easy question to answer, but those who have tried offer some intriguing theories.
So far we've gone through the holidays and a lot of the different traditions of, where different things come from. That's what I like most about this show is looking back and thinking about all those things that we do around the holidays, any other time of the year, if you were to chop down a tree and bring it in and set it up in your house, people would think that maybe a little bit odd, whereas this time of year, perfectly normal to do, things like that. So looking back at all of these traditions and seeing how they evolve over hundreds and even in thousands of years are really interesting. Now, a few of the things that I've seen about this conjunction that's going on tonight between Jupiter and Saturn. A lot of people said, oh, it's the Christmas star, and from the Christian Christmas story, the three wise men follow a star in the sky. And the show goes into, I'm going to skip over this part because it's actually not as accurate as it used to be. I think this show is from about 1993 or 1994. And we actually know a little bit more now. So I just want to talk just a little bit about this conjunction and what it might be. So what they do is they go back and they think about the things that it possibly could be. And it's actually a really interesting field of astronomy right now that's called archaeoastronomy. So it's a mixture of archaeology, archaeo, and astronomy. And what it means is we can do very accurate simulations of the night sky. About 100 years ago, a little bit more than that, people started to figure out the math of how the planets move and how different things move around in our solar system. And over the past 50 years, they've really refined those calculations and how to predict where planets are going to be, where asteroids are going to be, where comets are going to be, all of those types of things. And we've been able to do that really accurately for a good 40 or 50 years. Now, what's really interesting in the past 30, 20, and now by leaps and bounds, we actually have the computer power to be able to simulate all of these motions and go back. Even the software that I'm using tonight in our planetarium, I can really accurately rewind time back about 100,000 years and show you exactly what the sky looks like. And what archaeoastronomers do is they can actually play back their simulations and try to determine when certain events happened in history. For the past few hundred years, we've had the whole world has agreed on a calendar, and I do a whole presentation on calendars. I might do that come next month, usually in February, March. I do a presentation on that. But before that, all of the different cultures used different calendars, and they had different ways of keeping track of time. They didn't just start counting years. So one thing archaeoastronomers have to go through is go through the ancient writings of different cultures and look for things that they can kind of find out for sure. And one thing that all cultures across the world had in common was looking at the sky. Now, this show focused mostly on the European traditions that come out of that, and the Jewish tradition of Hanukkah and looking at Christmas. It's really interesting to note that, let me see if this picture is still here that I can bring up. A lot of cultures that come from the tropics regions, which are the regions from the equators up to about the Tropic of Cancer and down to the Tropic of Capricorn, which is 23 and a half degrees off of the equator in north and south. It's really interesting to note that their celebrations of the solstices are not as... It's not that they weren't culturally important, but they weren't as impactful because in these regions, the solstice doesn't mean as much. In the northern regions and the southern regions, the solstice marked this beginning of winter in these cold months when nothing would grow and it would be very cold. And there was reason to celebrate to hopefully have that turn around. In the tropics, the sun stays pretty high overhead all year long and stays warm. That's why lots of people like to vacation near the equator and things like that, because it stays warm. So their culture didn't have necessarily these cycles of, we can only grow, harvest in the fall, everything's done. They had different plants and different things that they would do throughout the year. So they would have been keen observers in the sky and still would have marked the solstices very much. they may not just have had as much of a cultural significance as they do in cultures that formed in higher and lower latitudes. So that's just a really interesting thing that comes up. Now, when we're talking about these solstice celebrations and these different things, and looking back in archaeoastronomy, there's actually been lots of different research, and there's no way to know 100%, what people were writing about 2,000 years ago, or even further back than that. But they have some pretty good guesses, and it comes from one of the lines of thought is thinking of who the wise men were. We know the story of the three wise men. And wise men was translated from the word magi, and these were probably astrologers of the day. Now, there's a very big difference between astronomy and astrology. Nowadays, astronomy is that science of everything up in the sky, telescopes, looking at constellations, stars, black holes, all of that cool stuff. And astrology is like your horoscope. That's, oh, I'm this sign, so this is going to be my fortune this month and things like that. Kind of a pseudoscience, entertainment, fun activity. They goes through, if anybody, likes reading their horoscope and learning about their sign and things like that, that's great entertainment. Not a good way to base major life decisions and things like that on. Now, as we go back in time, 100 years, 200 years, and even further back, the distinction between astronomy and astrology really blurs. Actually, a lot of the great early astronomers that we talk about were astrologers. They watched the sky very keenly, and they kept track of how it moved and how different lights moved around in it. And the end goal of that was to try to figure out what was going on in the heavens so you could predict what was going to happen next here on Earth. Now, all of those lights up in the sky, we know now scientifically, they don't have any impact on us. Even sometimes today, people talk about, they're like, oh, Jupiter and Saturn are lining up, and that means that their gravity is pulled. No, it doesn't. They are so far away, their gravity. Yes, technically, your gravity affects Jupiter and Saturn in a very, 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 very minuscule way, but it really doesn't have any profound effect on them at all. So even when these planets all line up, there's no gravitational play that's making changes here on Earth. But these early astrologers would have watched the sky very carefully. And some of the things we know about science now, we can kind of predict what they may have been looking at. So some people have suggested, maybe it was a comet, maybe it was a really bright shooting star. Comets were typically really bad omens, and shooting stars last really quickly. There can be things in the sky called nova, or new stars. That's when, in a galaxy close to us, a star goes supernova, and it'll actually light up really bright, and a new star will appear in the sky. Definitely astrologers of that time would have noticed something like that. But what we don't notice is they don't see anything like that mentioned in any other cultures. That's one of the really neat things about this archaeoastronomy, is there were certain events that astronomers everywhere in the world wrote about. Like, they would see it and they'd be like, oh, we saw this new star, this, it means this. And you could see it across different cultures. And when they look back in this 2,000 year time frame, they don't see anything from African cultures or Asian cultures that had some written records that would say, oh, well, yeah, everybody saw that. So it was probably more of an astrology thing, and it could have been one of these planetary conjunctions like we're having tonight. Now, the planetary conjunction that we're seeing does happen about every 20 years because of how these planets move and everything. More likely around this time, about 2,000 years ago, there was a pretty significant conjunction, what we call triple conjunction, between the planets Jupiter and Venus, and then also a really bright star in the constellation of Leo the Lion called Regulus. And all three of those lights came together very closely. This could have been something that, average people might have looked up and seen, but to an astrologer, somebody who was trying to predict what was happening on Earth, that might be a really, really significant event and could have sent them on their way looking around. Now I'm going to change up our screen a little bit here. I'm going to bring up a sky here, and this is actually the sky tonight, and you can see, just about in the middle of the screen here, this is Orion the Hunter and Orion's belt right here across this. And what I'm going to show you is some of the things that astrologers would have looked for. Now, we don't look at the sky as often as ancient people would have. This was their calendar. This was their timekeeper. This was everything. So people were a little bit more in tune, and astrologers especially took very careful measurements of the sky each night. And as we look at the sky, we see different constellations throughout the year. But if you really pay attention to the sky, like how the sky is looking right now, I have this set up for tonight at about midnight. So Orion's really high in the sky. And if I were to take a quick snapshot picture of this and then wait until Orion was exactly back in the same spot tomorrow night and snap a picture of it and then do that for years and years and years, I could put together a flip book and see how the sky moves. Now, what I'm about to show you is not how the sky actually moves. It's kind of a tricky simulation that I'm doing with it. I've deleted the sun, so the sun's light doesn't come into play here, or else the sun here would be whizzing through the sky. And I've deleted the moon. They move in the sky in very obvious ways, and I'm not talking about that tonight. So here's a picture of the sky tonight at midnight. And if I took a picture of the sky tomorrow when Orion was in the same exact place, it would look like this, and then like this, and then like this, and then like this. And I could go on for days and days and days, and you would say, hey, the sky kind of looks the same. But if you look in the upper right corner of the picture, each time I click, there's one little reddish star that appears to move each time I click. And it's not actually a star at all. That's our red planet. If anybody knows what our red planet is, one of our close neighbors. Yep, that's the planet Mars right there. Put the label on Mars right there. So if you take a look at that, I'm going to take the label down and have it move again. If we watch and we go back and forth, and you can see each day Mars appears to move. That's because as the Earth's going around the sun, Mars is going around the sun at a different speed. So it looks like it's moving a little bit in the sky. And if I were to play this through for the next couple of years and just fast forward the next couple of years, you would see there goes Mars moving. Here comes Venus and Jupiter and Saturn coming across the sky. And these planets look like they're moving. Now, we just went through an entire year's worth of skies just in that 10 seconds. Here we go. We're heading through another year. And you can see these planets move around in the sky because they're moving around the sky at different rates than the Earth is. And they appear to move in our sky. So astrologers would have paid really close attention to that. Now, our conjunction tonight, if we take a look at the solar system from above, here we have the sun in the middle, we have the Earth, we have Jupiter, and we have Saturn. Now, this is not to the correct scale, like, at all. I've made the planets look very big, just so you can kind of see what's going on here. Actually, from this scale, you wouldn't be able to see the Earth, Jupiter, or Saturn. They wouldn't even appear as little specks here. You wouldn't see them moving around. So I've made them kind of big just so that we can see them. I'm going to make Earth bump up just a little bit bigger. And you can see Earth. There's a day side to the Earth that's facing towards the sun, and there's a night side of the Earth that faces away from the sun. And so you can see if you're on the night side of the Earth as we rotate around or spin around, when you're on the night side, you could look up and see Jupiter and Saturn. Now, this is set up for about August. All summer long, I watch these two planets in the sky. If I fast forward time now and take us the other way, fast forward time now until what we're looking at tonight. If you notice, Earth's going around the sun. We're losing Jupiter and Saturn from our nighttime. But Jupiter moves a little bit faster than Saturn in its orbit. It only takes about 12 years to go around once, whereas Saturn takes about 29 years to go around our sun one time. And if I take it to tonight, right here on the 21st, Jupiter and Saturn are at their closest points that they can be to each other in their orbits. Now, we can only see them from just the little corner night side of Earth. And I'm trying to see here if I do this. Yeah. So, there we go. So, from the night side. So, that's why we're just seeing them just as the sun is setting. We lose them in the nighttime sky. We're looking out at a different part of space. But they appear very close to us together. If we looked straight from Earth, Jupiter and Saturn almost look like they're perfectly lined up. Now, they're not actually close to each other. Jupiter and Saturn are about 439 million miles away from each other right now in the sky. So they're actually very, very, very far apart. The sky can play little tricks on us and look like things are close together when they're actually still very, very far apart. But they are at their closest point to each other as they'll be. As time continues to go on here, well, Jupiter and Saturn would only be in our daytime sky, so they're not bright enough to see during the day, and you can see they're starting to separate from each other. As we go through, we'll be able to start seeing Jupiter and Saturn in the very, very late night or early morning. Come about May, June of next year, so next summer we'll be able to see them in the sky again. And they'll be more separated out from each other. And this is because we go around the sun at a very different rate than Jupiter and Saturn does. Earth goes around the sun in 1 year. Jupiter goes around the sun in about 12 years, and Saturn takes about 29 years. So about every 20 years, these two planets will line up with each other. If I really fast forward things here and let the time go by very, very quickly, you can see as the Earth goes around, in another 20 years, around 2040, we should have another lineup of these planets somewhere around 2040. So that's why this conjunction is happening. Now, if I take us to our sky right now, here in the sky, I'm going to move us around a little bit. There, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to label Jupiter and Saturn here and show you a simulation of what they'd look like if we could see them. So here's Jupiter and Saturn in the sky right now. And if I zoom in on them a little bit, let's see if I can get Jupiter centered here for us. There we go. And if I zoom in, using our Planetarium software, we can see that they are extremely close to each other, so close to each other that I have to take this off. And looking in a telescope view, you would have to magnify them pretty greatly just to get a little bit of separation out between these two planets. Now, if I jump to tomorrow night, the 22nd, let's see if this is going to mess up my screen or not. They're really not that much further apart than tonight. So hopefully, even though it was cloudy tonight, tomorrow night you can go out, you can know exactly where to look. You can go and you can see these two planets. Here they are again. This is what it looks like tonight on the 21st. Tomorrow on the 22nd. They're still going to be really, really close to each other. So don't be so upset that if it was cloudy tonight and we didn't get to see it. Hopefully tomorrow night. I don't know if I'll be able to do the live stream. I'm going to try to again. But definitely go out, take a look. They're still going to be extremely, extremely close together in the sky, and they'll look really neat. Now, while this has all been going on, I'm going to bring up a different stream here real quickly. Let's see if this is going to let me bring it up. Oh, yeah, here it is. So this is actually a live stream from the Canary Islands, an observatory there. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger so we can see it here. I just pulled this up. A friend of mine emailed it to me. So this is a live look through a telescope in the Canary Islands. Now it looks like if I do have a live stream tomorrow night, please don't expect this to be what you see. My camera is very much not this. It's a very amateur camera that's hooked up. And this is actually a very impressive shot. This gets into a little bit of the science of taking pictures, astrophotography of the nighttime sky and things like that. This is definitely done in a professional camera because there's lots of magnification. You can see Jupiter on the bottom, the brighter one, and Saturn with its rings on the top. Now, you can notice when you see these two planets in the sky, Jupiter is much brighter than Saturn because it's much closer to us. It's about 450 million miles closer to us. So it's much brighter. When you're taking pictures, how bright something is makes a difference, and especially when you're magnifying them this much. So it's really hard to get the... it's really hard to get these two objects visible in a telescope at once so that you can actually make out some details. If you see Jupiter right now, you can't see any of the stripes or the equatorial bands in it, probably because they had to boost up the exposure just to make Saturn visible. So you had to kind of overexpose Jupiter so you can't see as much detail on it just to bring out Saturn. It's actually a really hard thing to do. You can even notice if you look to the left and right of Jupiter, a few of the Galilean moons, which are really hard to get in a camera view. Now, normally you would not be able to see both of these planets together in one telescope view like this. It's just because they're in conjunction and so close to each other that you can actually see them. That's kind of why astronomers were very excited about this event, because it's one of the few times normally you have to point at Jupiter, look at Jupiter, take a picture of Jupiter, send a video of Jupiter, move your telescope a little bit, find Saturn, take a look at that. To see these two things together in one eyepiece is actually really, really neat. So if you just go onto YouTube and you search the Great Conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn from the Canary Islands, you can probably find this live feed if you want to see that. Now, where to look for this tomorrow night? I'm going to bring up one more time our stellarium here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and I'll set it up for tomorrow night just so you can see exactly what you should be looking for as you go out. So I'm going to pause time here, and I'm going to take us to the 22nd, and here we are at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So the moon will be visible during the day. It'll be that first quarter moon, or a D-shaped moon, or half of a moon. It's not actually half of the moon. You're seeing half of a half, or a quarter moon. But that's why we call it the first quarter moon. But that would be the first quarter moon. And you'll see the sun setting at about 4 o'clock. If you draw a line from the moon to the sun, that's where you're going to find Jupiter and Saturn. If I jump to 5 o'clock here, just about 5 o'clock, if you have really good vision, you might start to pick out Jupiter and Saturn. Again, if you draw a line from the moon to right where the sun's setting, that's where you can see it. I'm going to take us to about 5:30 here. That should be when it's best to see. And they should still look just really, really, really close together. Depending on how good your vision is, they might still look like just one star in the sky. They might have a slight separation to them. Again, if I zoom in on these two here, still really, really close to each other. If you have a pair of binoculars, take a look. You'll be able to separate them pretty far from each other. If you have a telescope, absolutely point it to them. I don't know if you'd get them in the same field of view tomorrow night. It might be a little stretched. Yeah, it might be a little bit hard. Now, they're still much closer together. They're only about 0.2 of a degree apart tomorrow night. So they're about half the size of the full moon. So if you can get the full moon in one shot, you could probably still see these two things depending on how much magnification you have on your telescope. So that's looking at these two objects tomorrow evening. So it's supposed to be clear. Hopefully still go out and enjoy that. So I'm going to bring this down and put this back up here. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put this back to the time right now and let it play so you can see it. There we go. That's what our sky looks like right now. And I'm going to jump back. The Seasons of Light show only has about 2 minutes. I like to let the credits play on this, just because a lot of people did a lot of hard work to build that. These planetarium shows, it took me about 3 days just to go through the built planetarium show and make sure it worked right for this screen. So to originally make this from scratch was a lot of work. So, and it gives a nice little wrap up to that. So this the end of the show here will be about 3 minutes long. It'll go back into the show and talk a little bit about that. I hope you enjoyed the presentation from our planetarium. If you really liked it, make a comment. I'm going to try to do more in the spring. Right now, obviously, the planetarium is not open, obviously, and not any time in the foreseeable future we're going to be able to get in there in the next couple months. I'm currently as a teacher on assignment in technology. I do technology for helping teachers throughout the district with technology and things like this, creating videos and things like this. But I hope to start moving more into the planetarium and doing more live streams like this and virtual field trips. This was kind of my test out for some of this software to make sure that it actually worked and you could see it. So doing some lessons in classrooms and things like that and working back towards doing a little bit more than that. So comment if you'd like to see more of that. Do look out for the monthly videos. If you go to the Mallon Planetarium website, let me see if I have that here somewhere. I don't know if I have that still. Oh yeah, here it is. So this is the Methacton's Planetarium website. So www.methacton.org/planetarium. It has our public shows listings. When the planetarium is open, we do shows once a month that are open to the public. You can come. $6 for students, $8 for adults. Under this tab of what's in the sky this month, if you click on that, that's where I keep all of the monthly videos. So here's December's video, the December 2020 video, if you want to go back and watch that. And like I said, I try to post that around the first of each month. I also try to put a listing of the different constellations that you can see in the sky that month and how to find it. And there's a fun astronomy quiz and a couple other things, a guide to buying telescopes if you're interested in that. And you can also email me at my school email address for information on things like that too, if you're interested in that. So that's the school website. You can check that out if you want to see some of the videos that we put out there and some of the presentations that we do. We spend a lot of time trying to make that look really, really nice. So I'm going to switch this over. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope it brought a little bit of joy into your holiday season, learned a little bit. There were about 110 people watching here between YouTube. Sorry, it's really crazy for me. I'll post some pictures of my setup. I have 3 different screens going on. I have my phone and my iPad to make sure I can see everything. I didn't really get a chance to look through the chat too much other than when the show was going on. Normally if I do this in the future, I think I'm going to need a moderator to run it with me to ask me questions as I'm going. But thank you. I really do hope it brought a little bit of joy to your season, even though we can't be together in the planetarium. I wish we could be. I'm glad that you could see something. I'm so glad that so many people were so excited about things happening in the sky. This is my passion. This is what I do every day. It's really cool. There's lots of cool stuff. Not quite as cool to see as this, but there is a lot of cool stuff that you can see if you get into telescopes and things like that in the night sky almost every night. You do have to deal with the clouds, and that's just one of the frustrations of astronomy. I've had nights just like tonight where I get my whole telescope set up. It takes me about 15 minutes to set that up and calibrate it and everything, just to have clouds roll over your head and be like, okay, take it all down and start over again. But it's really great. So after this, I'll leave the stream running for just a few minutes. I'll look through the comments. I probably won't be able to get through all of the comments and things like that, but I'll try to respond to some people. You can always email me at achantry, ACHANTRY @methacton.org. Great things like that. Get in touch with me through the website and things like that. I see lots of class of 97, class of 98, Methacton grads. I see there's a bunch of people on there. What's up, Dustin? How you doing? I see John Hobbs on there. A couple other people. Definitely a cool thing. Once we get back into the planetarium, please come see me in the planetarium. Even though this is interesting and it's neat, there's nothing like sitting there in the planetarium in the dark and actually seeing this directly overhead. Really, really knocks your socks off. So thank you very much for everybody coming out and taking a look at this. Give me 1 second. I'm going to switch over the screen here to hopefully... I had this worked out earlier in the day where this did work when I jumped right over. And I think it was right here in the show. I was able to restart it, and it happened pretty easily. Let's see here. I'm going to turn the screen dark. That worked. Okay. And we'll finish up our Seasons of Light show here.
This is the season of darkness and quiet and cold. But we have always made of it a time of brightness, filling it with the rich texture of our traditions and our tokens of light. We observe the holidays each in our own way. In doing so, we still keep faith with all the peoples through the ages who have made this season a celebration of life. And at this darkest and brightest of times, with its good wishes and good cheer, we too wish you peace on earth and goodwill. And most of all, we wish that all your seasons may be seasons of light.